Hey gearheads, and welcome to Garage Talk, a discussion on all things automotive. I'm Cory.
And I'm Matt. And each week, this podcast will serve as a catalyst for discussion on all sorts of topics that grind our gears, excite us, or just need a bit of extra conversation.
In our first podcast, we both figured you needed to know just a little bit more about our personal car histories, who we are, why we're doing this podcast, and where we hope to grow in the future. As I mentioned before, Garage Talk is a discussion about all things automotive. And while this podcast will mainly feature our two voices, you can join the conversation online. Like us, follow us, tweet us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at GT Garage Talk. You can email us your thoughts and opinions at gtgaragetalk@gmail.com or visit our website, gtgaragetalk.com, for more information and to voice your opinions. We'd love to hear from you. Why don't you tell our awesome listeners a little bit about yourself and your car history?
So, my car history actually started on two wheels and not four. My first gas-powered anything was a 1980 Honda XR80 dirt bike. And at the time, I think I was in 5th or 6th grade. Man, that was the ultimate freedom. We lived next to a guy who had a big field out in front of his house, and I got permission to ride all over that place. And I rode the snot out of that bike. I loved it. We actually moved a couple of years later, and that bike funded my first car purchase. Sold that bike for about $500 at a garage sale that my folks were having while I was out of town, no doubt. And got a quick phone call from my dad. He said, "Hey, I got somebody here who's willing to buy your bike. Are you willing to sell it?" I said, "Well, I guess so." I was, 14, 15 years old, looking at needing a car in the future, and so that was kind of the direction it went. So then I was on the hunt, right? And my dad has had 3 or 4 Volkswagens in his past, his growing up, and some of the cars that he's had, and he fell in love with them, and that probably bled into me a little bit over the years.
It's funny how that works, right?
I love it. So the air-cooled bug bit me, and my first car was a 1971 Volkswagen Super Beetle. Paid a whopping $350 for it. It was not running at the time, but it was a roller.
Minor details.
Oh, yeah. Come to find out, actually, after we split the case for that engine, the cam gear had spun off the end of the camshaft. So it needed a full rebuild, top to bottom, inside and out. The car was blue when I got it. It ended up being orange. I think there's a few pictures on the website of that car. And there's probably also some painful pictures of that car on the website.
Hurts
because
me to look at them.
It took us about 2.5 years to get that car back up on the road. So I was well into my teenage years and 16, 17 years old. And matter of fact, I actually left to go to college at 17 in my dad's 94 S10 pickup. 4-cylinder, 5-speed, nothing fancy at all, but it had dual exhaust, dadgummit. So I drove the mess out of that thing too. That's it. And they were little bow tie tips too, the little outline of the bow tie. It was wonderful. That was a blast of a truck, and that poor truck.
I remember that thing. Yeah,
I wore it out. So I left for college actually in that truck, and my parents moved up to where I was going to college a few weeks later and brought the car with them. I was able to finish it up and get it on the road. That fall, got to play in the snow a little bit that winter with it, and then the following summer were when the painful pictures happened. I actually asked my girlfriend at the time that week if she would marry me on the beach in Galveston. And after I had made the trek down from Oklahoma City to Galveston in that poor little Volkswagen, and on the way home, northbound on 45 around Fairfield, Texas, there was a fine gentleman who decided to pull out in front of me in his Expedition, and I swerved to miss him, and the rest is history. I ended up turning the car over on its roof and spun it around a couple of times, and thankfully, by the grace of God, my fiance at the time and I both walked away with just minor scratches and a little shook up.
Yeah, when you look at the pictures, you don't expect to hear just minor scratches or anything like that.
Oh, yeah.
So
That was
definitely an awesome experience. How long were you in that car driving it? Like, how long did it live before it met its unfortunate demise?
well, running and driving. I drove the car once Dad and I got the engine back in it, but there was no windshield in it. There was no glass in it or anything like that at that point. So I couldn't really legally drive it on the road. I rode it up and down the street a couple of times. So it was that fall in 2006 or so, I guess, when I finally got it out on the road and registered and insured and all that good stuff. And so it was maybe 9 months worth of drive time that I actually got out of that car.
How much work went into it?
Oh,
years
yeah.
for 8 months.
Yeah. And the other unfortunate part about that car, I learned a lot with that car. When Dad and I rebuilt the engine on it, we actually forgot to torque the number 3 rod to the crank, and it let go. And that was not the only air-cooled Volkswagen engine that I ruined, but it
The first of
it was
several?
the first, yes, yeah. And so out of that 8 or 9 months, there were about 3 or 4 weeks in there where I was waiting on the engine to be rebuilt the second go around. And so yeah, that was a fun go. The next car after that, and you and I share this car in common actually. I believe it was a 98 or 99 Grand Am by Pontiac. Had the 3.4, the infamous 3.4 V6.
So powerful.
So powerful. I thought it was because I was used to 4 cylinders and 5 speeds. So a V6 with an automatic was whole new territory for me. 2-door. It was kind of sporty looking ish.
Yeah, but you just had the SE, right?
Right. Yeah, I was not privileged enough.
Yeah.
But I will say mine was a 2-door, whereas yours was a 4-door. So,
Yeah.
There's pros and cons to both.
I still had that GT badge.
That's right. And they were both white, too. That's terribly interesting. Sold that car. I drove my wife's 98 Mustang for a little while. Another V6 automatic, a 98 Ford Mustang that she inherited from her brother. And so by the time I got to it, it was already well used and abused, and it was a tired old car.
If you know anything about the brothers and what they put it through, yes.
Oh my, yeah.
It was used for construction by that point, right?
I believe so. Yeah, definitely some table saws and things like that carried around in that car. So after the Mustang, we as a family at that point bought a Pontiac G6, a 2008 Pontiac G6, same 3.4 V6 under the hood of that one. Even after 10 years.
You probably had that one the longest out of any.
I think so. Yeah. I had that car for quite a while. Ended up trading it in and almost got as much for it as what we paid for it originally.
That's unheard of.
Yeah, that was a fun one. But that was a blast of a car also. I miss Pontiac very much.
They've had some real winners, and they've had the most obvious loser in probably all of car history with the Aztec. But yes.
Well, you had to bring the Aztec up in the first episode. We're going to alienate people from this podcast in the first episode.
One of my high school best friends sought out and purchased a used Pontiac Aztec, and she loved that thing more than any other car she had or would have in the future. So
my goodness,
there is some Aztec love here. Yeah.
It's small.
It served its purpose, even if that purpose is the lightning rod and the butt of all jokes.
Yeah, probably so. Let's see. So after the G6, I think I ended up with the 94. Yeah, that would have been my 94 F-150. So
back to America.
That's right. Yeah, back to my American. Well, it was a V8. I don't know how big it was, but no, that truck. That was really when I started coming into my own as far as choice of vehicles. Yeah. Before it was more about what kind of purpose it was going to serve, or it was the one that was left over. So,
Right.
The Volkswagen was my first one, and then everything from then kind of
Came out of necessity.
Exactly. And so with the F-150, I had my now ex-wife, my oldest son's mom, had moved back to Texas, and she took the Mustang with her, so I traded in the G6. Her decision, not mine. Don't jump all over me for that one, okay? 98, 08. I know it doesn't make sense, but that was what she took. It was a family heirloom kind of a thing. So, but no, ended up with a 1994 Ford F-150 XLT 4-wheel drive, manual with a 302 V8. It was extended cab, and it was the two-tone green. And I will emphasize the green. People have complained that it was blue, but it was not blue. It was very green.
It was a tealish seafoam.
Green.
Green. Okay,
it was green. No, and I absolutely loved that truck. But again, necessity led me to end up selling that truck. And, this was around 2008, 2009, so the economy was kind of meh. And gas prices were like, holy crap.
Yeah.
So I ended up, I think I had a picture on Facebook for a while of, it was a dual tank truck. So there were two, like 24-gallon tanks.
So you really could spend an arm and a leg.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. There was, one of the times I went to the gas station, the total bill was $123. And it was close to 50 gallons worth of fuel. I mean, it was insane.
I ever went over 85, but we'll get into mine in a little bit.
Yeah, it was. So, I bought I sold that truck, bought a 2000 Honda Civic, and I think out of the vehicles that I have owned to date, and I've owned some decent rigs, but the vehicles that I've owned to date, that was probably the most bang for the buck.
Well,
out
Honda,
of yeah, well, I mean, yeah,
reliability and all that good stuff.
The reliability was incredible. I did very little, if anything, to that car. I had to put tires on it when I bought it. It needed tires, but it had the 14 steel wheels.
Yeah.
And so for like an extra $150, I was able to get 15s. You're laughing at me because you remember how hideous those 15s were.
I'm just laughing at the fact that we're talking 14s and 15s now. I don't think you can get anything smaller than a 16.
They may not exist. Yeah, they may not. So I ended up with a 2000 Honda Civic. It was just a plain Jane. I think it was an EX and 4-cylinder, 5-speed. Back to the 4 cylinders again. I know. But it had power windows and locks. It had a keyless entry button, and it had a sunroof. Oh man, it was great. And I drove the mess out of that car. If there's anything consistent about my vehicle history, it's that if the throttle pedal would go that far, I would put it there. I loved hammering on all of my vehicles, but that one, it didn't matter how I drove it. It got 30 plus miles to the gallon all the time, anytime, every time, whether I was on the highway or stop and go traffic. For some reason, that thing got incredible mileage. And it was a blast of a little car.
And going from $100 fill-ups to that.
Oh yeah, to like $40 fill-ups, and it would last me
forever.
So yeah, that was a fun little car. Of course, I had it for a little while. The economy got a little better. Fuel prices came down a little bit, and
you got that itch.
I did get the itch. My wife tells me I never got rid of the itch, but
I think we were probably both born with that. It's not going away. I'm constantly shopping.
Facebook Marketplace is a horrible thing.
Yes.
Horribly, terribly wonderful
app,
thing.
Bad
Auto
thing
Trader.
too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
All of it. Technology is not
Craigslist. That would be a great episode. Yeah. We could do like Craigslist versus Facebook versus Auto Trader or something like that. That would be a good one.
We'll have to follow up on that one.
We should do that. So I sold the car and I got into a, please don't hate me for this, a 2008 Ford. Easy. 2008 Ford F-150 crew cab, 4-wheel drive, with the dreaded 3-valve Triton 5.4. And I say dreaded with all respect to the idiotic engineers at Ford Motor Company who thought that engine was a good idea.
Well, Ford does stand for fix or repair daily, and you're kind of living that right now, right?
I am definitely living that right now. Yes, I've had that engine apart more times than I care to know about. I've done the cam phasers and timing chain and oil pump and water pump and all those fixins. And it took, I had it almost completely apart when my dad came down one weekend, and he and I spent 12 hours on a Saturday finishing tearing that truck apart and putting it back together. Not because I don't know what I'm doing, but because it was such a pain in the butt to change out those cam phasers and timing chain. And I continue to have issues with it. Different things, different just ridiculous Ford things.
And all of that, you are still sitting here wearing a Ford hoodie
Absolutely.
as we speak.
Oh, absolutely. And
they've done nothing to drive you away.
Well, yes, and I will say this, and before anybody thinks that I'm 100% gung ho Ford, I am not. And I would argue also that your GM buddies.
Well, that's a whole nother story you can get into.
That the LS platform has probably been one of the greatest engineering marvels in the history of the automobile, especially in the history of the V8.
What they've been able to accomplish with that and keep refining on over
Absolutely.
the years has been impressive.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And the little things that end up happening with it are just that. They're little things. Yeah. And most of the time, anything aftermarket has already fixed those issues. So, if I could have an F-150,
you're about to commit heresy here, aren't you?
Probably so. If I could have, and I'll say it boldly, if I could have an F-150 with an LS engine under the hood, that would be the truck worth having.
There's something to be said about that. I'm not quite sure what it is at this point, but there's something to be said. So that's your current vehicle. So
that's my current rig. That brings us up
to speed on y'all.
Yeah.
And then your wife.
She actually got for her graduation present that her parents made her pay for a 2005 Toyota Camry EXL, the fancy one. I mean, leathered out, power everything, beautiful little car. And we drove that thing. She put 60,000 miles on it, going back and forth to visit her parents and everything else during college. And then she and I was working 15 miles across town one way when we moved back to Texas. And so I put some miles on that car too. We ended up selling it to a friend of ours, and it's still going strong. Yeah. But we bought for her. She wanted something bigger. We have two boys now instead of just one. So she wanted something that could haul them and their buddies and baseball bats and everything else. So we've got a
infamous 3-row SUV.
Absolutely. And I would argue, of the size of that SUV, it is the largest as far as interior space, and arguably
so you'll need
the
to
most
tell
comfortable.
Everybody what it is.
You
and I both know.
It is a 2012 Honda Pilot. And yes, I know there are transmission issues with those vehicles from like 2007, 8 up through 2012. Thankfully, we have not had those issues just yet. We're at almost 140,000 on that car. Bought it with just under 100,000 a couple of years ago, and it's been an awesome rig.
My parents have one too. I believe it's a 2012 as well, and things still running strong. They use it for all their long road trips and vacations that go on with them, and you ain't kidding. That thing is huge inside. It's a giant box.
It is, yeah. So the wheels and tires are on the corners, and so the whole interior space is just, and they handle, and that 3.5 V6 is Honda did something very right with that rig. What about you?
My history. All right, here we go. So, just a little bit about me. I fell in love with cars in general when we moved from the Houston area to Tyler. And we were living in an apartment complex waiting for them to finish building our house. And the neighbors up above us had a fourth gen Camaro. At this point in my life, I'm sad to say I don't know exactly what year model it was, but it could have been anywhere from 93 to, it was 96 at the time. And it was blue-green, I think. I can't even remember the actual name of it. But I fell in love with that car, and I would stare out the window at it in the parking lot. And I started asking my mom all sorts of questions because she was the one we went to about all kinds of car history. And Mom, what's this? Mom, what's that? Dad was working, and we were off for the summer, so. And she told me what it was, and that's when I started researching in the pre-internet days. Pre-internet days, before you could just Google anything you wanted. Everything I could about the Camaro. I went in bookstores and bought books, and I fell in love with that car and its history and everything about it. So by the time I got to middle school, I was car posters all over the wall and things like that. But my first car was actually a hand-me-down. It was my grandfather's vehicle, and I started off strong, or I started off spoiled, if you want to say. 1991, so not necessarily the best year model for American automotive engineering.
Right.
But it was still a Cadillac Eldorado.
Absolutely.
And he only drove it to the golf course and back. So hardly any miles on it. V8 engine.
Yeah.
Front wheel drive. So that was kind of weird. The doors on that thing, 2-door. Again, 90s American car.
Oh, yeah.
The doors would kill you if they even thought about closing on you. You better get out of the way.
I think they were longer than the car was, actually.
Yeah. You rode in that thing a few times.
I did.
You know... it was maroon outside, maroon leather inside. It was marooned out. So blacked out cars now are murdered out. This thing was marooned out. It was a sight to behold. But digital gauges, all kinds of fancy whiz-bang gadgetry for 1991. And that was when I started learning about car troubles. Again, 90s American engineering did not let me down, or should I say, did let me down repetitively. Yeah. That thing got to where it was constantly in the shop, and it was transmission issues, which are not cheap. And I remember one day I pulled into the garage and said, "What on earth is that smell?" And I started sniffing around, and I noticed there was a trail all the way down the driveway, all the way down the street, and as far as I could see, there was a trail down the road. I was leaking transmission fluid for at least a mile. And I'm surprised it had anything left by the time I got back from school that day. But that was just the tip of the iceberg of the problems I had with that car. It was a family car, so it didn't go away, but I used some college money that I wasn't needing because I was going here locally. I had a lot saved up growing up. Thank you, grandparents. And bought the first vehicle I picked out for myself. I don't even remember how we found it, but it was the Pontiac Grand Am GT. Yes, it was a four-door, but it was a GT. And going down the list of spoiled, it also had leather seats. It had a sunroof. It had a monsoon sound system in it.
Yes, it did. That was a sweet car.
I actually miss it a lot. It was a fun car. It didn't weigh a lot coming from a boat of a vehicle that did. And it handled like nothing compared to my history at that point. You know? And I loved that. It got me around, took me to and from my first job, which was at a swimming pool store, which led to my next vehicle, which started me down a very dangerous path of buying exclusively brand new vehicles. Yeah. So my first ever brand new vehicle was a beautiful one. I love it. It's probably the one I would go back to if I could. I've seen it around town since, but it was
your exact truck.
yes, and I know it was mine because of what I did to it. So
Oh my.
it was mine. I know her face quite well. And anyway, it was a 2007 brand new body style, the redesigned Chevy Silverado crew cab, Texas edition. That's when they really went heavy on this whole Texas edition thing.
Chrome everywhere.
Yes, lots of chrome. It was 2LT, so it was like as close as I could get to the top of the line without being top of the line. Leather seats, spray and bed liner, like it had it all.
It was beautiful.
I put custom exhaust on it, put a custom grill on it, wanted to do all sorts of things to that, but life situations changed. You alluded to the economy and fuel prices, and like I said, I topped out at, I believe, the highest I ever paid for a tank of gas was $85. But that was at a time in my life where I could not afford $85 fill-ups.
Yeah.
And I bought it on the premise of doing swimming pool cleaning and repair. And by the time I got rid of it, I wasn't doing that anymore. So all that extra income was gone. And yeah, I needed something a little more economical and fuel efficient. And
so what did you buy, Corey? in your
2011 Chevy Equinox SUV.
Uh-huh.
A mom car.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Very much a mom car.
Oh, yeah.
And it was going back to maroon. It was maroon-ish. I won't say what other school from around this general area it looked like, but it was maroon. It was maroon. It's not what you read.
It was
maroon. And again, 2LT, decked out, sunroof, leather, heated seats, remote start. That's when, that really became a thing. I think the truck had remote start too, and it had the switchblade key, which car now still has a switchblade key, but that's a cool feature. I don't ever want to go away.
Volkswagen started that, I will mention.
They did. I remember my dad test drove Golf once and was looking at getting it, and that was the first one I ever saw with the switchblade key. Like, that's awesome. But yeah, had my little Equinox, bought it for fuel efficiency. It was a 4-banger. So like I really went down from a 5.3 V8 to a 4-banger Equinox. And I bought it because I was going to Texas Rangers games, 2-hour drive away, one way, 25 times a year. And so it got expensive.
Yes,
and
yes,
got something with better fuel economy and was immediately let down. It never lived up to the fuel economy figures on the sticker. Granted, you and I both have a heavy foot. That was a tough vehicle to drive with a heavy foot because that was not its intended purpose ever. And so that one lasted about a year before I got a promotion at work and turned 25, that magical age for guys, and car insurance. Everything gets cheaper because all of a sudden you become a better driver right then and there.
Right. Instantaneously you become...
On your 25th birthday.
Yeah.
And, I bought a 2012 45th anniversary edition Camaro SS. 6.2 liter, 6-speed transmission. Man, I love that thing.
All the good stuff.
Yes. And fully decked out. Like, every option that you could get on it. The first and only decked out brand new car I've ever owned or probably ever will own at this point in my life.
It was beautiful.
But man, I absolutely love that thing. And I also overstepped my bounds on that one. So you should never, ever buy your dream car unless you've just got tons of money to put into it. Because again, Jags, Auto Trader, Facebook Marketplace, anywhere I could spend money.
Right.
I was looking to spend money on that car. I don't know why I said Auto Trader. I wasn't going to trade it. But yeah, car parts, I put an intake on it almost immediately. Thank you, K&N. But I want to pour so much money into that. But it's interesting. The 2 rear tires on that car are more expensive than the whole set of 4 for my current car. So that car got expensive very quickly. And
so Just the rear tires, though.
Yeah.
Did you ever have to replace the front?
No.
No, never.
Not. I only owned it for a year again.
Well,
because of how expensive it was. But yeah, no. Funny thing, I never had to replace the front ones. Just the rears.
just the rear.
But yeah, all-time favorite car, personally, the Camaro, and then to get to own one. On top of that, it was an anniversary edition.
You and I road tripped that car
Yes.
to Houston for a game one time.
And that was not long after I got it. That was probably one of the first long trips I took it on. And
Well, it wasn't that long of a trip in that car.
No.
It was,
I made it quick.
yeah.
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 And the thing about that one is it was deceptively fast.
Oh, man.
Like, I've gotten pulled over for speeding several times in my life. But that's the first one I ever got a ticket in.
Really?
And what gets me is I got the speeding ticket when I wasn't even intentionally speeding. I was coming home from my parents' house on Christmas Eve night and driving home, just kind of zoned out, and apparently I was doing like 15 over. Now, I was so mad because in that car I have done so much worse.
Yeah.
Safe driving, folks. Safe driving.
That's right.
But to get pulled over when I was just cruising along, not even paying attention to things, it was upsetting. But I'm sure the cop was not happy about having to work on Christmas Eve, nor was I happy about getting to meet him.
Probably not, yeah.
Yeah, I had to trade that car in. It had kind of become an idol in my life and needed to separate myself from that. I still love it, still dream about it.
Oh, yeah.
I love that car, but went super practical and economic.
You went literally
like the polar
like
opposite.
the only there were three things about the vehicle that you purchased after the Camaro that really coincide with the Camaro.
Mm-hmm.
One was the color. Mm-hmm. One was the manual transmission.
Yeah, couldn't steer away from that.
And the other one was that it had four wheels like
Yes.
the Camaro.
And they're both Chevys. So there's
Okay,
that.
all right. So they were both yes, both GM products.
So yes, I traded my all-time favorite car, my dream car, in for a 2013 Chevy Cruze Eco with a 6-speed manual transmission.
At least you kept the manual.
Yes. That car, I will say, is incredibly fun to drive for what it is.
Oh yeah.
It is meant to get just crazy good fuel economy. It stickers for 42 on the highway. I've gotten over 50 before. Like
Wow.
that thing will get the fuel economy from a non-hybrid engine. It is a turbo 4.
Yeah.
But that thing, it sips the gas. And I mean, I can drive to Dallas and back and still go to work for a week before I had to fill it up. Like, barely have to. I think I fill it up once a month. Granted, I drive 12 miles a day to and from work.
Yeah.
But, yeah, polar opposite.
So James May, the James May, from that other
The other
GT
GT
show.
Yes.
who argues that driving a slow car fast is more fun than driving a fast car slow. Would that?
There is some very wise truth in that.
Yeah.
Because the Camaro would sometimes scare me because of how much power it had, and I'm not formally trained. I'm an idiot kid with a lot of horsepower. But I have taken both cars down the same windy roads, and yes, they're both fun in their own rights.
Yeah.
Given it the choice, money not an issue, I'd definitely have the Camaro, but I'm having fun with what I've got.
Good.
So, yes, that's where I'm at now. Chevy Cruze Eco, got a kid, so it's practical. I fill it up
Sure.
once a week. And then I married into, so this one is fun, a Mini Cooper, a 2010 Mini Cooper.
All right.
Not the S. So, base model, teal blue-ish green. My wife fell in love with the color, and that's why she bought that one. I described the motor as sounding like a lawnmower. Like, a passionate driving vehicle that was not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after we got married and started planning for a family, 2 doors was not going to work for us, and traded that guy in. for a 2014 Jeep Cherokee Trailhawk.
Which was almost new at the time.
Almost new at the time. We got it in 2016, 2017, something like that. And it is loaded. It has everything. The thing will park itself. My wife never uses that feature.
Right.
I do as a party trick.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's interesting. But it's stickered brand new for $42. And we were able to get it for $24. And it only had 18,000 miles on it when we bought it.
Yeah, that's a heck of a deal.
We love that thing. I have not been able to find a deal anywhere close since we've bought that. And I've kept looking because I'm like, man, if I could find another one of those or anything as good for as cheap and as few miles, man, that was a winner for us. And
absolutely.
So that is the car we take everywhere now. The poor Cruise sits around, and like I said, 12 miles a day is about all she sees. So
the resale value will be incredible, right? Because there won't be any miles on it when it finally...
It's only got 76,000 on it right now, and it's already had some major engine work done to it. So good old Merca engineering right there.
Absolutely. We were looking into that just a couple of weeks ago, weren't we?
Yes. We can look into that a little bit further in the future.
What is it about us with these practical vehicles that we buy and then they bite us in the butt when it comes to mechanical issues?
Yeah. I'm sure all our Japanese automaker friends will say, you got to buy Toyota, you got to buy Honda, stuff like that. But I am a diehard loyal, if you hadn't figured, by all my cars, a GM fanboy, Chevy in particular. But I have never personally driven or owned. I've driven other things, but I've never owned anything for my personal use that has not been General Motors.
Until the Jeep.
The Jeep, but again...
Which is the wife's car.
That's the wife's car,
yeah,
yes.
Absolutely.
Very much her car, but it's got me looking elsewhere now. I'm not going to lie. So I'm branching out in my old age, if you want to call it that. Well, we just want to say thank all of y'all for listening. It has been a great time. We're very excited about this little passion project that we've got going on called Garage Talk. We've got a lot of things in store and planned for the future that we look forward to. But right now, we've got this weekly podcast that we highly encourage you to subscribe to and listen to. You can check us out at gtgaragetalk.com, where you can find out all information about us, see our faces for once. Our faces are actually up on the website. You see me sitting in my Camaro, living it up for the 1 year that I had it.
Yeah.
And
there's a skinny picture of me in one of my other Volkswagens there for a while.
Yeah. And so, gtgaragetalk.com for all information about us and where we are. You can subscribe to our podcast that way or find it anywhere podcasts are found. You can also hit us up on our social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at GT Garage Talk, and join the conversation. We'll be reading all comments and formulating future show topics from all of that. And
absolutely.
Look forward to starting the discussion, because that's what this podcast is all about. It is a discussion about all things automotive, and we ask you to join with us and just help grow this into an awesome community. Until next week, bye.